All right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another episode of IMO. Today we're talking about the recent decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sport to overturn UEFA's ban on Man City taking part in European competition. Why has it happened? Should it have happened? And what does it mean for the future of football and financial fair play? Let's talk about it. And we're back. And we've got another IMO live on the go. We're enjoying them. I think you guys are enjoying the live element to these. We're getting you involved in the conversation at the end. And obviously today's all about Man City. Now, I've got to be careful what I say about this one. I've waited a few days to read as much as possible and think a little bit about it. Because it's quite a loaded one with tribalism involved. Because they've got people that just have an opinion on it based on the finances, based on what should be happening. We've also got Man City fans who've obviously got their own point of view. We've then got fans who are actively against Man City and worried about them competing on the pitch. Liverpool, Man United, whoever. You've heard comments from Mourinho. You've heard comments from Klopp. And it's very important that, unfortunately, whatever I say, someone usually uses my position against me. They say, oh, you're a West Ham fan, you would think this. Oh, you would think this. Like, very few people are prepared to just engage in the conversation. But that's what we try and do here, as you guys know. And we try and get the facts first. I did a tweet recently when I found out that the ban was overturned. I said, great day for Man City, not a great day for football. And people were picking at me on that and they weren't happy with it. And I probably need to explain my comment more. Ironically, it's very similar word for word to what Jurgen Klopp said the day after, which was yesterday. And he said, bad day for football. He said the same words I had. And now, obviously, when Jurgen Klopp says it, everyone's looking at it from a Liverpool perspective. Oh, obviously, he's going to say that. He doesn't want Man City to have money. Yeah. Or has he got a point? I think most people that aren't involved in that title race competitively with Jurgen Klopp can see that he's a pretty well-rounded character. And he tends to say pretty bang-on things in his press conferences. Of course, he's got a horse in the race. Me, I don't really, do I? In fact, I'm not ashamed to admit I'm quite fond of Man City. I worked for Vincent Kompany the year they won their first ever title. I don't support Man City, but I don't want to see them do badly. I'm certainly not against them, which is be surprising for Man City fans to hear after my tweet. People don't engage with the facts and why people are saying things. They just see something that annoys them and they go, well, he thinks this because of this. And it annoys me personally. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about the situation. So, why is it a bad day for football? It's important to stress the first thing, which is I don't hold anything against Man City and what they're trying to do. Financial fair play has been flawed since day one, significantly so. Essentially, the critics will tell you financial fair play has been devised because the big existing elite of football, the Man United, the Bayern Munichs, the Juventuses, the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids, they didn't like the fact that clubs could be bought out by rich people that weren't previously in that elite and make their way into their old boys club, okay? That's what they didn't like. They were threatened by it. Man City being a case in point, PSG being another. So they asked UEFA, they put a lot of pressure on UEFA to come up with some rules nowadays known as financial fair play. Now, they were sold as a dream to the world of football as a way of governing the financial aspects of football clubs, making sure they don't put themselves at risk and they take, calculated steps in their investments to make sure they don't leave themselves in a bad position in the future. We're all for that. I mean, I'm certainly for it. I don't know if we're all for it, but I'm certainly for clubs being made to be financially sensible and sustainable. That's something that I try very hard to do with my football club, #United. But that's not what financial fair play is about. It's never been about that. The idea was it's supposed to say, you can't spend more than you're bringing in, or you can spend a little bit more than you're bringing in. You can have a tiny loss, but not a sizable one. What it actually does is it stops teams that don't have the ability to make loads of money across the world through their brand ever competing with clubs that can. That's what it actually does. It's disguised. It's like wearing a cloak of invisibility, but actually it's to protect the big boys. Okay? So when Man City come in and they start spending loads of money, then the clubs at the top, and obviously there's financial fair play at lower levels as well, like the Championship and whatnot, but talking about it broadly here, the big boys go, hang on, we don't like this. We need to do something about this. They're coming for us. And honestly, maybe you like a bit of conspiracy theorist, maybe you don't, right? But you can never read too much into this. Like, I would not be surprised to find out that Man United, I don't want to throw names at any particular clubs, but any competitor to Man City, so Man United, Real Madrid, Barcelona, whoever, I would not be surprised to find out they're like employing people actively to like uncover dirt on Man City's financial tactics and stuff. I would not be surprised. Like, they're so against new clubs coming in and taking their perch. Like, it will be killing Man United so much the years they've been out of the Champions League because their brand is so big and it should be in the Champions League. But isn't the whole point of the Champions League that the people that are the best should be in there? It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter about your history. Okay, again, I'm a West Ham fan, sure. We haven't got the same level of history as some of the other clubs. I have to say this stuff every time I make a bloody point. these days because I know what the comments are going to say. I already know what you're going to write. You little mugs in the comments. You can't talk about football like with your own brains. But the case is that it shouldn't matter how many Champions Leagues you've won. Of course, from a romantic perspective, you want the big boys in there. If you were to design your perfect Champions League, sure, you would have the Real Madrids playing the Barcelonas because of the history involved. But if you were designing your perfect Champions League, you'd never put Leicester in there. But how good was it that Leicester got in there? Amazing. People weren't worried about Leicester doing it. You didn't hear the Man United fans and the Bayern Munich fans or whoever kicking off that Leicester in the Champions League because they knew they weren't a threat. They knew they weren't a long-term threat. They didn't have the money that City have. As soon as City came in, they got pretty scared. Okay? They got pretty worried, so they put pressure on to create these rules. But these rules have never been good. They've never been right. They've never been just for all. They're not giving people the opportunity to actually invest in their team in a sensible way, but ultimately with a goal to threaten the status quo. It's to protect the status quo. So that's my first thoughts on financial fair play. I've actually talked about this a lot on the channel before, and with my own opinions of how it could be improved. I personally think clubs should be allowed to invest in things off of the pitch. I think clubs should be allowed to invest in improving their academies, improving their brand worldwide, improving their facilities, all with the guys to getting better players, ideally through their own academies, ideally like growing your own, getting high in the league off your own supply, right? That's the ideal way of doing it. Of course, you've got to have some transfers, right? But I'd rather have then stipulations on wages and transfer fees across the board, not relevant to how much money you've got coming in. The same for everyone, i.e. a salary cap. We've talked many times before about why this doesn't work in football. It doesn't work in football because it has to be the whole world. It's a world game. It's a victim of its own success. If you just do a salary cap and transfer cap in Premier League, all the best players, the mercenaries at least, are going to go to Russia. They're going to go to China. They're going to go to whatever country they can where they can still make the big bucks until all countries get on board. And that is ultimately where we are. The world needs to take on a salary cap and transfer cap for football. And if this pandemic hasn't proved that point, I've been saying this well before coronavirus, but if this pandemic hasn't proved that point, I don't know what will. And that was what my tweet was about the other day. It's frustration that we haven't used this opportunity once again to clean up the finances of football. Because trust me, right now, all these clubs just exist on this model whereby they're going to do well as long as they've got a guy who's going to throw money into the club. And as soon as that goes, and I'm not talking about the elite there, the Man Uniteds and whatnot, and I keep saying Man United, take it as a compliment if you're a Man United fan. I'm not against you. It's just that you are, in my opinion, the epitome and the pinnacle of like a football brand in England. That's why I keep saying you, because of how strong your brand is. So don't take it as an insult. But those brands can make a lot of money without winning competitions. And we've seen Man United's profits haven't even, they've decreased, but they've not become Leeds United as a result of not winning the Champions League and drop down the divisions. You know, they can sustain themselves without actually achieving at the highest level because of the size and quality of their brand. But yeah, what financial fair play is doing is stopping other teams competing with them. Now, in Man City's case, they got loads of money. It came in before financial fair play existed. The new rules came in, and then they had to adapt to them. Okay, they made a huge loss in the years prior to the new rules coming in. Then they have to clean it up. And you should do your own research. I'm going to link some videos in the description, which are really useful. There's a channel called Tifo Football, which is great at this sort of thing. They make these infographic videos that explain a lot of stuff, including the three they've made I've watched that actually Faisal Manji sent me about this subject. And they're very, very enlightening. Now, Man City had to clean up their act. You can only make, I think it's 30 million loss over 3 years now. So you have to make sure you're not showing too much of a loss. Now, how do you do that? Okay, there's 3 ways a club can earn money. Match day revenue, i.e. tickets. TV broadcast revenue, which we know all about. Sky's, the BTs, the whoever's paying the big money for rights of games. And thirdly is commercial revenue. Now, it's very hard to fake match day tickets. It's not impossible. And broadcast revenue. But commercial revenue, you can really do a little bit of clever accounting. And what's happening with the cases of PSG and the case of Man City and potentially Newcastle in the future is basically royal families, basically countries are buying clubs with Qatar and UAE in respect to PSG and Man City, right? And they're so powerful and they're so rich that what they're able to do is put together these sponsorship deals with companies, which is against financial fair play. You're not allowed to artificially inflate sponsorship deals into your club from companies that either you own or relatives of you own, right? And well, the point I made on Twitter the other day is, okay, so it's like £400 million deal for Man City sponsorship, which includes the stadium and the shirts having Etihad on it. £400 million for 10 years, 40 million a year. That's way above what, when it was signed, people would have argued, and experts would have argued, that was worth as a deal. As a result, they couldn't get another company to do that. They couldn't get, PlayStation to give them that sponsorship. They couldn't get, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, O2 to give them that sponsorship. They have to go. There's a reason these clubs have the stadium and the kit with the brands that they own. It's not because they just want to promote their own brand. Think about it. If they could get that much money from an outside party and not from their own pockets, of course they would do it. The fact is they can't. They are decorating their accounts to make it look like they've got more money coming in than they actually do or should. Okay, so this is why Man City gets stick. However, I will defend Man City as well, because I'll say I don't agree that they shouldn't be able to compete with the big boys. They should be allowed to be given a chance. I've got a lot of time for what Sheikh Mansour has done to the area of Manchester, the facilities created. They are going to produce good players for their academy. He's invested money in the right way, not just on the pitch in wages and salary, but off of it as well. And I've got a lot of time for that. But there are rules in place. The reason I said it's a bad day for football is because ultimately the people in charge of these rules that set these rules, they can't enforce them. They can't enforce them. They're a laughing stock. They ban a team that everyone finds out in the whole world. I made a video about it when it happened, however long it was, 6 months ago, saying you're banned from European football. We all knew it wasn't going to happen. If I can find a soundbite from my video, I'll put it in here. If they are guilty, their best bet is making this go on for so long that it gets slowed down and at least delayed, if not reduced, and maybe even cancelled. We knew Man City weren't going to get banned. How pathetic is that? No. That UEFA, the guys in charge, they can't follow through. They've made rules they can't enforce. You know the reason they can't enforce them? Can't afford to. They can't fight Man City. Man City and their owners are so much more powerful than UEFA. It's a joke. And there is quotes. Again, I've got a lot of this from the Tifo videos. There is quotes to say that the guys in charge, Mubarak, I think it is, that's the director of Man City, has come out and said things like, I would happily spend £30 million on lawyers, getting the best lawyers just to defeat UEFA. Like, they've got unlimited funds, and UEFA don't when it comes to law and legal fees. So Man City will just outspend them. So essentially, you've got a situation where you've got some people, and it's not just Man City, PSG's the same. You've got people taking part in a competition, an organisation, whatever you want to call it, i.e. UEFA Champions League at UEFA, that are so much more powerful than these guys. It's like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a really basic example you could understand. Like, it's like an MP for Norwich, just a random guy, a member of Parliament for Norwich, creating an event and telling the Prime Minister what to do. Now, I know they're different systems, but ultimately money is power. Man City are more powerful than UEFA, so they can't be punished. And what they do, and this is how they do it, right? They don't outwardly break the rules. So the rule is you can't post a loss of more than 30 million. They won't. They won't post a loss. You'll have to then apply a level of interpretation upon the rules to find them guilty, which is, you didn't post a loss of more than 30 million, but where's that money come from? Oh, well, let me get my lawyers to talk to you about that. And people don't want to play the game. They have an endless supply of money, so they will just take you to court all day. They will appeal, appeal, appeal. And you can't, I'm not a legal expert, right? But you can't, if there's an appeal open and you kick a team out of the Champions League, you've already done the damage to them. And that could be, depending on the club, that could be irreversible damage by not letting them have that income they've gambled to get into a competition. So generally, they'll slow down the ban. They'll pause the ban until it's been figured out what's going to happen. So they don't actually get punished, ever. We knew they weren't going to get punished. In this case, Man City did get, I think, a £10 million fine or euro fine. Because they did break a rule. They were found guilty of not keeping UEFA up to date enough. Not giving the right information when requested. That's what they were found guilty of. So they did break a rule, but not one that's linked to the banning of Champions League. The reason other people are annoyed, that's where my annoyance comes from. My annoyance comes from the laughing stock that is this FFP situation. Where you've got these rules that, and I guarantee you another club breaks them, they won't get the same leeway just because Man City can afford to. And I've just seen it so many times in football. I've got more involved in it now in the non-league structure. And, this pandemic situation was no different. There is no way on earth that our non-league, I'm not going to keep bringing it back to this, but it's just a good example, should have been made null and void. No league with any money anywhere in the world has been made null and void. Because we're considered grassroots, amateur, semi-professional, whatever you want to call it, we couldn't part of the fight. And the FA just went, eat it, basically. It always comes back to money. There have been other bans in the past, sure. Chelsea have got a reason to feel aggrieved. They had the transfer ban, of course, the embargo, as a result of supposedly, well, again, it's to do with breaching, it's a different rule. It's to do with breaching the targeting of young players. I think in this case it might have been Billy Gilmore But it's to do with approaching players sort of illegally, which is another rule you shouldn't be breaking. It has to be respected. Their thing got overturned as well, though, don't forget. They did have to sit through a summer's ban, but the time January transfer window came in, that had been lifted. Once again, the bans don't stick. These guys can't enforce their own rules. It's embarrassing. At what point do UEFA become arbitrary? And I mean that. Is there going to be a world where basically the big boys, and when I say the big boys, I mean the rich oligarchs, just create their own UEFA and go, we're actually going to govern football now? I don't think it's that unheard of, guys. I don't think it's that crazy to think. Because these people only took power in the first place because they just put their hand up. UEFA, FIFA, all these organisations, they were started overnight, 100 years ago, whatever. They went, we'll do it. And they got a vote of confidence and they got to be able to do it. What do they actually own? Okay, maybe they own the Champions League and it's called the Champions League. But what if these guys just go, we're going to create something new. It's called the UAE Champions Cup. Come and join our one. We're going to put higher prize money in it. Man United go, yeah, we'll do that. I don't know the impact of it, or I don't know where FIFA comes into it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it. There's fair opinions on both sides of it. I don't resent Man City for doing what they're doing, because they're just basically using the rules that have been created and their legal power to fight things against an organisation which has had plenty of its own issues in the past as well in UEFA, and corruption, and we've seen Platini, what's happened to him. Again, we've seen similar stuff at FIFA. So I don't really resent Man City for trying what they're doing. From a neutral perspective and a football fan perspective, I don't like this idea of just buying the league. And it's not new. Man City didn't create it, yeah? Blackburn Rovers, an English owner in 1995. That's how they got their only Premier League title. They spent more money than everyone else. It's not a new thing. And it is very apparent the lower you go. It's something that's been thrown at us at #United, because we've done well in the 2 seasons we've had. We probably would have won the season in the second time. Obviously, a low level. People look at us and they go, you're buying the league, which is so far from the truth. I'm all about sustainability. We spend, in terms of football, we spend like the least money of most teams in our league. We spend our money on content and stuff that's going to bring money back in. But the irony is, because we're doing well, and we're always generally winning, other teams have come up against and said, oh, you're buying the league, because they're so used to saying that when a team dominate. That's the problem, man. What happened to sport? It is true. The sport now is not really about guys running around playing football. That's just an illusion. The sport is the rich guys in the boardroom playing marbles of humans. That's actually what high-level football now is. And that's why, personally, I enjoy grassroots and non-league so much, because there's still elements of money buying results, but it's real people from the area, mostly, that they're playing in, and with a passion and with a approachability that is unrivaled at the top level. The point I'm making is, this is not a good sign. Yes, it's a great sign for Man City, and I don't hold it against them, but the reason I say it's a bad day for football is because this sort of thing, whether it's a blatant breaking of the rules in the future or a kind of harder to identify one in this case, it's just going to continue. And there is no financial regulation. There is going to be some sort of Super League at some point. Man City have probably done enough now to get themselves in it. That's the difference. They got their money in time. They got it before FFP. Newcastle, if and when this happens, they're going to have more money than anyone. I don't see how they're going to be able to use it. They will break rules. If they're going to actually use the money they have at their disposal to do what Newcastle fans ultimately want them to do, they will break rules, okay? Because there's no way they can do it within the money Newcastle have made over the last few years, which is how financial fair play works. They've got to make the club more profitable. And they won't be able to compete with the clubs they want to compete with legit sponsorships. And they won't be able to get the bigger legit sponsorships until they compete with them. That's the irony and the self-fulfilling prophecy. So Newcastle will break rules if they get the money. The question is, what happens when they break the rules? And if it's anything like what happens if Man City breaks it, the answer will be ultimately very little. You'll get a slap on the wrist, a 10 million fine, which is literally toilet paper to these guys. It's so little money, and they'll keep growing. And I like the status quo being challenged. I like the idea of Newcastle and other clubs coming in and doing it. But it needs to be consistent. It needs to be a rule that isn't designed to protect the guys that are already rich. I'm all for financial management and sustainability of football as well. I'm all for a reduction of the money spent in football. I'm all for that, but it's got to be across the board. It's got to be fair. I've talked many times before about how America, despite being one of the most capitalist countries in the world and the most socialist when it comes to sport, they have drafts. I'm not saying we should have drafts, but they have drafts, and they make sure that the worst team gets the best player. They have salary caps. They have all these rules, and they have, sure, designated players. Even the MLS within the football world still has a designated player rule, and how much wage you can get per player is limited unless they use a designated player slot to pay someone more money. That's going to ultimately limit the MLS in their growth massively. That will limit it, because they're in a world sport now. It's not like baseball going, we're the World Series, and it's like just American teams playing it. They're actually in a world sport in soccer. And if they want to compete, they have to play ball. They have to spend the money. But I'd rather us copy them. I'd rather every league get more like that. Start limiting spending because there's no need for it. Football is a business now. It's all about money, much less about sport, equality in sport. I like the idea of everyone starting on the same station and whoever's the best at it, be it technically, be it mentally, whatever, wins. I know that's not the case in a lot of sports. Football's not on its own in that, but that's how it should be. Because when you win then, you know you've won. And you've not won because of some other reason. We're actually just watching a race of bank balances disguised as football. We're just watching a lot of bank balances run towards a line. And guess what? The highest bank balance usually wins. That's the sport of football now. Anyway, that's my thoughts on financial fair play. That's my thoughts on Man City. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Drop a like if you're enjoying these live IMOs. I know they're a little bit different. I've got some ideas on how we can improve them in the future as well. Make sure you check out my Twitch if you want to see them live. All the links you need are in the description. Until next time, don't go changing.